Hey guys, welcome to the Aeroponic Tower channel. Today is July 16th and we are going to do a mid-July tour. What is growing on the towers in mid-July? So come join me. Let's take a closer look at everything that's happening. We have so much food going on here. All right, here is one of my tomato towers. And this tower got turned off for a little bit. So if it looks a little bit droopy, that's why it just got turned off in the hottest part of the day. And then I went and did a heavy pruning on some of the leaves because I have things in here like green beans, these gorgeous green beans. I will put the variety of this green bean above. This is a unique green bean. It's actually about 30% longer than a traditional green bean. I like to grow this variety because you just get more green bean for your investment into a seed. I mean, just look at how huge this is. So these are growing, and some of the things that were on this tower were getting shaded out. If you come down here, I have some kale. It's about time to pull this out. It's wanting to go to seed, so I'm going to replace these kales tonight and just pop them out and put some new starts in. We'll add those to the menu for dinner. But here I have a bell pepper, and this was getting a little bit crowded in the tomatoes. So one thing you can do if you have plants that are getting shaded out with your tomatoes is not to prune the actual tomato, but prune the leaves. I'm growing determinate dwarf variety tomatoes on this tower, and I choose to do the dwarf variety tomatoes. These are not micro dwarfs. These get up to 4 feet, anywhere from 2 to 4 feet, depending on the variety. But I choose to do dwarfs because they have stronger stems. They don't take up as much water and nutrients, and instead of growing 2 tomatoes that are going to take over this tower, I can grow 15 different varieties of tomatoes and have just an abundance of flavor and texture and color with my tomatoes. So you can see here, you can come closer. And the names of these are all tucked in the tower, so I can't tell you what they are off the memory, but I've got a tomato here that's going to be more of a slicer tomato. Or as you come over here, we have some grape tomatoes. Up here we have some cherry tomatoes. This back here is a gorgeous variegated Roma tomato. So by growing dwarf varieties, and I will put a link below to where I get my dwarf varieties, it's part of the Dwarf Tomato Project. These are not GMO, they are just bred to have specific characteristics. This one's kind of droopy, like I said, because the water was turned off. Never worry if that happens. They come back once they get enough water hydrated back in the system. But I grow these just so I can have such a huge variety of tomatoes. I'm trellising them with some twine. So you never want to prune your dwarf tomatoes because that is fruit. So if I were to thin this and prune this like you would an indeterminate variety in the garden, which is a variety that keeps growing and growing, then I would lose all of these buds that are going to produce fruit. So instead, what I like to do is just prune some of the big leaves, and that allows a little airflow. Now you can see these don't have any disease, so I'm not dealing with any disease on these plants. But in the gardens, my garden out in the soil gardens, my tomatoes already have tons of disease. I don't know if it's the backsplash from the ground, but the dwarf varieties also are more disease resistant, but they're bred in a way to where you don't lose the flavor and the texture of the food. So the Dwarf Tomato Project is an excellent place to go if you want to learn about dwarf tomatoes. But I have my bell pepper in here. I have over to the side here, I haven't pruned the leaves on this side, and you can see there's a jalapeno trying to get some light in here, and I want to make sure this jalapeno has lots of room and lots of sunlight to produce jalapenos, and this will continue to grow up. So pruning some of these leaves just frees up a little bit of space for some of those other plants. Most of this is, there's some squash towards the bottom. There's peppers sprinkled throughout here. Here's another pepper plant inside here. Oh, let's pull this one out. And I can just pull this one out so it gets some more sun. It's not fruiting yet just because it is in the shade. And then I have some green beans on this tower. If you look down here, we have some of our first tomatoes ripening. And this is a yellow variety, just a grape tomato. And yellow tomatoes are my absolute favorite, so I'm super excited about those. We also have one blushing here, starting to turn. And just look at how perfect this fruit is. There's no black spot, there's no end rot, there's no blemishes. Everything is just absolutely perfect. On this tower here, I have just a mixture of things. This is a flex tower, but it actually has a baby greens extension kit on the top, which allows me to grow just a lot more food. You can see I have full heads of celery growing in my baby greens section of this tower. Just amazing, gorgeous heads of celery. We eat off of this quite frequently throughout the week. And I like to take these and juice the whole thing when it's time to harvest them. So they do amazing, and it's a way to just maximize what you can grow on a tower by adding this extension kit. I have parsley here, there's kale, there's endive. Down here I have some mustards, and these mustards are getting mature and wanting to go to flower, so I'm going to harvest those today and plant some new plants in there. And to harvest them, we just pop them out like that, and I have this bundle of mustard greens to add to our dinner tonight. We're going to be harvesting some green beans and peppers and all sorts of things for some homemade pizzas. I have some peas. I like to grow peas on the towers in the summer, and you plant them high and then just allow them to trellis down in between all of these plants. They stay cool next to the tower. The tower is cooler because the water gets cooled off at night. They're shaded by the other plants, and it just allows them to produce throughout the summer when typically it would be too hot for a pea. So when I see the peas trying to grow out and get more sun, I just tuck them in just like this. Here we have a tomato. This is another dwarf variety, and it's growing from down below here. Here are my cucumber plants. Like I mentioned, they are on their way out. They've got some diseases. That's real common with cucumbers. I get a lot of questions. Why do I have all these brown spots? And that's just the nature with cucumbers in most climates. They get diseases and pests, and we just start over. So these have given us a ton of cucumbers this season. I have new starts in other places ready to go, so I can just pull these out over the next couple of days and we will start over. All right, this tower here, so down below on this tower I have some zucchini that's still fruiting. Actually, we're gonna cut this leaf off. This leaf got damaged. And this time of year, right here, you can see there's squash bug eggs. Every day I come out and I just look for leaves that have squash bug eggs on them or any that have hatched, and thin those out. I like to keep a lot of airflow on my zucchini. I have other videos on that, and that helps to keep the pest pressure under control while we go through these hot summer days. We are at the peak of pests right now, and a lot of this food is on its way to being done. It's provided us an enormous amount of food, and it's time to switch some of these things out. These green beans, for example, we're gonna harvest some of these, but this plant's just a little bit scraggly, so we can pull this out and put in another green bean. This tower here, this is another tomato tower with dwarf tomatoes. I have not thinned this one at all with the leaves, so just to show you what the difference looks like thinned versus not. If I wanted to thin this out, I do it for the weight and to allow the other plants that might be in here to have a little bit more space. But anytime I see leaves that have a little bit of yellowing, I'll just take those off, and we can just thin some of this foliage. And when we do that, you can see inside here, let's get one more, just how many tomatoes are inside the tower. We have a variety. We have slicer tomatoes, cherry tomatoes. There's a grape, another yellow grape tomato that's about to be ripe through here. So there is all sorts of food just in this tower. There's leeks in here and some kale and nasturtium. I like to pair green beans with my tomatoes because they kind of pop through and do really well together as a companion. So that is what's growing on this one. We've got some really cool varieties down here, more of that heirloom kind of funky shaped tomato. Those are always so delicious, fun to grow. All right, this tower is one of my favorite right now because of this incredible kale. The kale in my soil gardens is about 40% pest pressure right now, meaning 40% of the leaves have been completely consumed. Here on the tower, there's a couple of little spots, but these are doing so amazing. I've been eating them every day. They taste so delicious. And just right at the top of the tower, they're reaching for the sky, out of the way, and growing amazing. As we come down this tower, I have shishito peppers. These do really great. I have a recipe in my ebook that is stuffed shishito peppers that are absolutely amazing. There's a reel on that too. If you guys want to check out some of my reels, I share recipes there. More tomatoes. I have tomatoes growing at all different stages, which just keeps us in tomatoes longer. So this one was planted later and it's a smaller bush. It is not diseased. The variegation here is just because it's a variegated tomato. Down towards the bottom, we have some marigolds and a sunflower. I'm growing those just for fun. I wanted to try some flowers on the tower. This is a murasaki pepper. It's very earthy, little bit bitter, but it's not a hot pepper. It's a sweet pepper. As we go towards the bottom, we have some gorgeous velour green beans. These are on their way out. They've been in the tower a really long time. I've harvested quite a lot of green beans off of these, so I'm going to be replacing that one tonight. Here's more shishito peppers. And then as we come along this side, I have these trellised. This is a pepper. It's gotten really, really long stem on it. I'm not sure what kind of pepper it is yet. I think it's a jalapeno, but I've got that trellised up just to give it a little bit of support. Over here is another pepper that's doing really great. This one is a really unique variety, and this one's ready to be harvested. Let's harvest this one now. How fun is that? Towards the top here, we have more celery, more peppers, and then as we go down towards the bottom, oh, it's a bell pepper. Is that the same? No. Oh, well, here we have a bell pepper. And we've got pepper in all different stages. This is a pepper just getting started. We have some fruiting. And then down here is one of my oldest zucchini, and we've been growing this zucchini for several months, and because we don't have to deal with vine borers, or I can manage the pests, it's grown all the way down and still has some zucchini blooming. This is the Cocazel variety. This tower is so fun. This one has Tromboncino squash towards the bottom, which is a vining squash, and that's kind of growing on the rocks. I have some zucchini squash. I have some yellow squash in here, and those are all along the bottom. And then here I have some fingerling eggplant. Look at how gorgeous that is. In my soil gardens, eggplant really struggles. We get attacked by flea beetle. That's what some of these small dots are. But on the towers, the flea beetles just do a little bit of damage. They don't consume the whole plant like they do in the soil. One of the things with pests that attack plants is they go after the weakest plant. The healthier your plants are, it doesn't mean pests aren't going to drop by and take a nibble, but they don't stay, and it's because the sugar content in these and the water content in these plants is just really good, and they don't like that. They're looking for plants that have a weaker immune system. So the healthier our plants are, the less pests will have naturally. So if you see little bites, what I do is just make sure that that pest has moved on and we don't have some sort of infestation. And that solves a lot of the pest problems. Here we have a pimento pepper. This is gorgeous pimento pepper, one of my favorite peppers. And then over here we have the absolute amazing patio baby. These are so prolific and they grow in intervals. So I have some that are ready to harvest. I have others that are just getting started with their flowers and their fruits. Over here I have the most gorgeous bell pepper ever. And you can just see there is not a blemish on this thing. There is not a mark. It is absolutely stunning. I want to harvest it, but I don't because it's so beautiful on the tower. I just love to look at it. And that's the product of growing on the towers, being able to get this blemish-free, gorgeous food that isn't all chewed up and messed with bugs from the garden. And on this side, it's just more patio baby with so much food. And we have more fingerling eggplant towards the bottom. We've got some jalapeno peppers in here producing peppers. Everything's thriving. And then this right here, I forget the name of this variety. I'll link it above. This is a standard eggplant. I like all different varieties, but I lean towards the patio baby and the fingerling because they're easier to cook with. You don't have to deal with such a large fruit, and these take longer to produce. So this one's got one fruit on it, and there's another one flowering up here. But we're going to be getting a lot bigger fruit a lot slower on a variety like this versus the patio baby, which is just dripping with small zucchini, or the fingerling is also very prolific as far as producing consistently and having nice edible size fruit. Down here I have some beets. This tower here is my juicing tower. I have another video where I just did a clean out and juice on this one. So it looks very scraggly and sickly, but it's because I harvested everything. And what I did was cut everything and I'm letting it grow back. I talk a lot about how I don't love to do that method. I find it better to start new seedlings and that the food tastes a little bit sweeter and is a little more gentle in the texture when you just start, and grows faster and uses less resources when you just start over. But I didn't have starts, and it's better to cut it and let it regrow than to do nothing. So that is what's going on here. So it looks a little rough, but all of this is coming back very, very quickly. You can see this Mizuna has already started its second flush of Mizuna. All right, in this tower here, I've got yellow squash. Finally, I didn't have yellow squash all season. Somehow just didn't get planted, or the plants didn't survive. I've got some velour green beans. Again, these have been producing for several months, so these are in need of being replaced with some fresh green bean starts that I have ready to go. Down here I have some baby eggplant. This is an example of flea beetle taking over. This didn't happen on the tower. I had these out in the yard near the soil gardens just while they were maturing, and the flea beetles found them. But I do not see any on there anymore, so that should be fine. And on this other side, we have more squash dripping from the tower. I did another video talking about where to plant your squash on the tower, so if you want to watch that, I'll put the link below. But these are doing absolutely gorgeous, combined with the shishito peppers and the regular bell peppers and the murasakis and some tomatoes. This is like a grocery store on the driveway. And that's it, guys. Thanks for joining me on this mid-July tour of my gardens. Food coming out of the garden is absolutely unbelievable. The pest pressure is a little high, so it's the time to be checking on your plants daily. Look for those squash bugs, look for those eggs and remove them. harvest the things that need to be harvested and replace them with new starts. Don't forget to be starting seeds every 2 weeks so that you always have something fresh and new growing on your towers. Thanks for joining me. I will see you on the next video.